Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we have a lovely lady called Sally. You know what that means. It's anonymous time. And she's going to share her gift. Well, I'll let her tell us what her gift is about. And then hopefully we can all learn. So nice to have you here today, Sally.
Hi, nice to be here, yeah.
So what is it you do exactly?
So I am a drama therapist, which means that I work with people generally who've experienced some kind of trauma therapeutically, and drama therapy isn't about acting or about performance, which is what a lot of people think. It's actually about working creatively to find ways to express and, you know, think about and talk about that trauma or what's happened to that person.
I have a friend, I think I understand, I have a friend who's gone through quite a bad trauma in her life, and she paints.
Yeah, okay, so that's...
And that relieves her tension. Like when she's angry, she'll paint pictures, very good pictures it goes.
Yeah.
And that's her way of releasing tension. So what made you want to get into this?
Well, it's a bit of a long story, I suppose, but I started out always wanting to be an actor, and trained to be an actor and worked as an actor for around 10 years, but really loved acting, loved the process of acting, loved the theatre, but fell out of love completely with the industry and how you go about getting jobs and having to be so self-promoting and pushy, and I really hated it. And in between acting jobs, to make some money, I started working as a supply teaching assistant in special needs schools.
Okay.
And loved it, really loved it, and wanted to find a way of combining my skills, and then came upon drama therapy. And it's like, I wish I'd come upon drama therapy when I was in my early 20s, because it's the perfect fit for me. It allows all of the creativity, all of that passion, all of that love for the process of theatre and the therapeutic elements of storytelling and story making, and working with vulnerable individuals. So I absolutely think it was where I was supposed to be.
Is there many job opportunities? Are there many companies who do drama?
It's becoming more and more accepted and more popular. Obviously, art therapy is the kind of more known and accepted strand of the creative arts therapies. But yeah, drama therapy, I always say to people, if they're training, it's quite a long training process. So I did an MA, you have to have an MA qualification in drama therapy to be able to practice. And I always say to people when they're training, when they say, oh, is there any work out there, is that you can find your own work. So there are jobs advertised for drama therapists through the NHS, and drama therapists work everywhere, in the prison sector, in NHS, in schools, all over the place. But the other thing that you can do is find your own work. So a lot of the work that I do, it has been work that I've made the contacts with people and, started doing maybe one day a week, and then it's built up from there.
I understand. So the masters is a masters in drama therapy.
Yeah.
And is there degrees or A-levels in
so
drama therapy?
You generally you have to have done actually a first degree before doing your masters, or have a lot of experience in an appropriate setting. So say, for example, I don't know, say you've worked in an eating disorders clinic for 10 years, and that would probably be enough experience with kind of a client group to be able to get onto the MA. But yeah, A-levels, Yeah, I mean, I did A levels. I don't know what the course requirement is for that. I did theatre and English and French back in the day.
That's quite it's quite a high bar.
It is a high bar
to become that position.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's not taken lightly because, you know, it's not just. I think a lot of people think, you know, what do you do? Like, what do you do? You know, and they think that we're in there just kind of prancing about, or, you know, but actually it's a psychotherapy. It's a form of psychotherapy, and it's just a different approach to doing it. And it's not that we don't talk. We do talk with clients. We're always client-led. So whatever the client wants to do, or whatever way that they find the easiest to express themselves, is the way that we work. So sometimes it is talking, sometimes it's art, sometimes it's story making, sometimes it's playing. You know, I work a lot with sand play and, you know.
What's sand play? Like just playing in sand?
Yeah, literally like that sort of developmental stage that children go through, where you're playing with the sand. It's a really sensory way of working. We have.
So this is adults.
This can be adults, yeah. I mean, I currently work with teenagers, so you would be surprised. You know, you think you get these kind of quite confident teenagers coming in that they wouldn't want to play with the sand, but actually, the sand tray itself is really containing for if you're working with frightening stories or difficult feelings. And then we have various objects and different things that they can use in the sand, or some people just like that sensory feel of pouring the water in, and it soothes them. So that,
go on.
Yeah, no, just that sometimes what you need to do is get people to a place of being calm and soothed and able to access talking about or looking at something that's worrying.
So when they're playing in the sand, would you be talking to them at the same time about whatever, or are they just playing?
They just play and then they talk, or they don't talk. I mean, I tend to occasionally will ask a sort of directive question, but generally, and that's something that you build up over time, I suppose, like any profession, the sense of allowing the person to work at their own pace. We certainly don't. I never work in a way of somebody coming into a session and saying, right, so today we're going to talk about, you know, your abusive father, you know, or whatever it is. We would never be that directive. The person, we always trust in the fact that the person will
talk when they're ready.
Exactly. That when they feel able, when they feel safe, when they feel like it's. And some people never talk directly about it. Some people. The beauty of drama therapy is also that you can take on different characters. So sometimes we act out stories and they can experience all of those things from a very safe place of playing a character. So whether that's playing out being the perpetrator, and it's not necessarily a literal reenactment of what's happened to them. It might be a fairy tale, or it might be a story that they've created. But it's a very safe way of working with what can be quite frightening trauma.
What would you say you've learned over the years that you wish you knew when you started?
Oh, I mean, actually, I was going to say that's really hard, and then I was going to say, actually, I know what that is to be quiet.
I think a lot of people need to learn that.
I mean, honestly, I'm not generally a quiet person, but certainly in terms of my work, sometimes I need to just be quiet. And even if that feels uncomfortable to me to sit there, in the silence, a lot of things happen and a lot of thoughts process and a lot of trust is built.
So you're talking being quiet with the client? Being quiet with the client
when... Not all the time, yeah. But, you know, not to always feel like I have to push for
some achievement.
For something to happen.
Just chill.
Just you know, because I think, you know, certainly for me, I mostly work one-to-one with people. We do sometimes run groups, but I personally the people I work one-to-one. And the absolute key to all of it is trust, and is the relationship between you and the client. You know, if the client doesn't trust you, then why are they gonna, you know, they're not gonna go anywhere with you. So sometimes in that silence, in that just allowing them to being with them, meeting them where they're at, rather than pushing some kind of agenda to deal with anything. And that's where a lot of the kind of best work comes out, I suppose.
It's funny when you spoke about the sand, because I remember I used to live in Kenya, in Mombasa, and when I picked my son up from school, we used to go on the beach.
Yeah.
And we used to bring those bucket things and I was trying to let's make a sand castle. And he wasn't kind of interested. I had to direct him, but I thought, this is really relaxing.
Yeah.
It's really relaxing kind of thing. It was, so I can see what you mean when you speak about that. What would you say to your 16-year-old self?
Oh dear. My 16-year-old self, don't be so silly.
Okay.
No, what would I say to my 16-year-old self? I would say probably something along the lines of, you know, just give yourself some space. Stop trying so hard. You know, give yourself, stop being so hard on yourself. Just give yourself a chance to be yourself, and it'll all work itself out. You know, just be with it. Stop. The same thing, actually, funnily enough. You know, don't try and push for it.
Do you find that the therapy that you help people with actually helps you?
Definitely. I mean, as part of your training, you have to go through personal therapy. It's an absolute.
Oh, is it?
It's an absolute requirement.
So you have a therapist?
I did during my training, and I still have a supervisor. So which is more work related, but I've worked with her for, well, like 12 years now. So it's also, there's a therapeutic element to that.
Sorry, go on.
No, and I don't currently have a therapist, but it is something that I would go backwards and forwards from, you know, over time.
Going back to the masters situation, what occurs to me now, I realise why you need a master's, because you're like a psychiatrist or a therapist, something like that. So you're really dealing with the switch in people. Yeah. So you want to. So obviously the government wants people to be, or whoever does the standards, wants people to be.
And we have to. We're registered with the HCPC, so we're a healthcare professionals council as well. So we have to be accredited. We have to be meeting the standard. We have to be continually professional developing. You know, we have to be on that because I think it's completely right, because you're working with people at such a vulnerable point in their lives, and when you're in therapy, you're extremely vulnerable, because that's by nature of the process, isn't it? That you're opening yourself up and you're allowing things to come out that generally you keep hidden. And so it has to be maintained. It has to be kept at a level that you know that people are acting professionally and appropriately and are fully qualified to do that. You're not allowed to practice as a drama therapist without an MA qualification. So although some people say, you know, they might be qualified in something else and say, oh, we use drama as part of it, to be a drama therapist is a specific qualification.
I see what you mean. What I've come as a podcaster. I've run 446 episodes, and some of the episodes have been really traumatic. Yeah. Because someone sat in a car, and they say it's easier to speak to a stranger. Yeah. Yeah. And they've just offloaded their life of child abuse or whatever. You know, someone's kidnapped and raped and all these kind of things. And the stories, I always say, when people say to me, what's the best stories that you've heard? And I say, I don't see it as the best, I see it, what is the most eye-opening? Yeah. I used to think I've heard it all, but I don't anymore. Because every time someone sits in the seat, the story can get more dramatic. But point being, what I find is some stories, as soon as the person gets out, it's like I have to tell somebody else.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't tell names and
dates,
but I just like
you have to share the story.
Because it's like, and I'm not telling them like, oh, hear this gossip. I'm trying to relieve. It's like a pressure is in you, and you just need to. And I also call my friend. I call her, and I say, like, Carla, guess what? And it's like, and then you kind of, it's like you're deflating. It's like, but then there's also like, it's like your brain's being exercised mentally, if you see what I mean. It is really interesting. So,
but I think that's really important as well, because I mean, for me, I have my supervisor is the person who I do that with. So because we can't, none of us can hold, when somebody speaks about their trauma, if you're an empathetic person, which you obviously are, and in order to be interested and want to understand and want to know people's stories, you take a portion of that. As they offload, you take a portion of that on you, and which is great, but it also means there's only so much that you can then take on personally without you then having a kind of overload or a burnout or to all this trauma, all these experiences. So that's actually why those things are extremely important. That I'm sure that you would find if you just held on to all those stories yourself and didn't share them, then you would start to feel.
Yeah, because you also, I think it changes the way you look at the world.
Yeah.
You start to look at everything very suspicious or cautious, and it's like you want to wrap your loved ones up in cotton wool kind of thing, where the only way they're really going to learn in life is through experience.
It's so hard, isn't it? I mean, I've got a young family myself, and when I hear the stories at work and the things that happen to, often just due to my client group, often things that have happened to them as young children, and it's really terrifying and it's frightening. But I think one of the things I've learned through my work, and I always kind of felt like this my whole life, but I've always kind of believed that people are innately good. I really do. And I had a wobble at the first point in my career where I was like, oh my God, people are not innately good. They do these horrendous things, these terrible things to other people. But I suppose as I've now been practicing for, I don't know, around 10 or 11 years, and what I've learned is that, and it's not excusing or letting off the hook, but often when you start digging under these terrible things that have happened, they're usually come from something terrible that's happened to that individual, and something terrible that happened to their parent, and so.
But I hear what you're saying there. I've kind of gone the other way.
Have you?
I've gone the other way. It's when I hear things about, I come from children's home, so when I hear things about child abuse, I'm a big advocate for capital punishment when it comes to child abuse. And I mean, I don't mean, it's obviously you get people say, well, what about this kind of case? What about that case? I mean, with our modern technology today, and you've got DNA thing, and you've got DNA, let's say, on the child where it shouldn't be, from an adult. You've gone to the dark side. You're not coming back.
Listen, I am not. It's my absolute bottom line worst thing. There's no question. I mean, and again with young children myself, it's absolutely horrific. I think what I'm saying is that, if you dig into it, often the abusers will have had that experience themselves, and that's not an excuse. But actually what it comes to for me in terms of my work is how do we break the cycle? It's not necessarily about, but it's how do we break the cycle? How do we then stop that next child who's been abused from becoming an abuser? How do we intervene and allow them to process that experience so that they don't go forward and carry on that repetitive cycle that often happens? And that's not saying that every child who's abused becomes an abuser, or that every abuser has been abused, but it is often a factor?
I think it's not us to do it. I think it's them to have self-control. And I say that, it may sound quite flippant, but it's just like a drug addict. They have to make a conscious decision that they don't want to be an addict anymore. No matter what you do, what you say, there's a point where they just have to do the work themselves.
But I'm talking about like an earlier intervention than that. I'm talking about an intervening with the children after they have experienced the abuse, before they even get to that point. So it's like,
I see what you're saying. There's a difference with children and adults.
There is, but there's also a middle ground. I mean, I often feel like, where I'm working with kind of secondary age, it's a middle ground. Mm-hmm. So it's a becoming an adult. So this, at that point, those choices are made, and those experiences. So if all you've experienced your whole childhood is, negativity, how do we change that? That you're then becoming an adult to not take that out into the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. It's been a great discussion. It's been a big mind opener. Last quick question.
Yeah.
What's the impact you want to have on the world?
Honestly, this is so trite, but I just want to make it a nicer place for my kids.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that.
Thanks.
And we wish you well.
Cheers.
We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.